Well, here we are again on the Whistle podcast to interview one of the heroes of the 1998 World Cup team that represented South Africa in France. The gentleman that South Africans didn't know where he came from. Who is this person? How did he end up here? We expected it to be Andre Arendse. We expected it to be Brian Baloy. And then Hans Vonk. Yeah. Hello, Hans Vonk. How are you?
Good afternoon. Very well. How are you guys doing?
Very excited to interview you today.
Good. Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest. No, I'm joking. But it's nice to speak to you guys. I've seen a few of your podcasts, and it looks very good. So yeah, let's take it from there.
Well, firstly, Hans, I just want to say thank you for making the opportunity to talk to us. But can you just tell us, where are you at the moment?
Yeah, I'm in Cape Town at the moment, more precisely in Woodstock. Bit rough and tough in Woodstock, but a very nice social neighborhood. It's a Sunday afternoon now. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell that. I don't know when you guys are broadcasting it, but it's nice. It's a bit of winter in Cape Town at the moment, cold and windy and rainy. But other than that, I'm happy in Cape Town since a couple of months when I moved back from Holland to South Africa.
Well, I'll tell you something, Hans. You couldn't pick a better day here in England today. The temperature is 23 degrees. It's bright, not a cloud in the sky. It's not the way I like weather. Alasdair will tell you. I would prefer to be in Cape Town where you are. I would prefer to be there. I love that type of weather.
Is it? Okay. Well, it's okay for a weekend, but hopefully from tomorrow on it will be better. But nevertheless, I'm living a happy life in Cape Town. As I said, I'm in Woodstock. We bought a property here, and basically start a new phase in my life where I quit football already. Half a year ago. My last job was in Amsterdam with Ajax, doing international affairs, international partnerships. But not longer happy in that role, and also not longer happy in Holland. So I wanted to go back to South Africa, where I have a beautiful girlfriend, and together we bought a property in Woodstock, and this is where I am now.
Well, Hans, we'll get into that because you and I have spoken about that quite a bit. But let's go back here, Hans.
Yeah.
As a goalkeeper for the Bafana Bafana national team that went to France in 1998, how did you come about representing South Africa? Because I'll tell you now, Hans, nobody that I know who were avid watchers of football had ever heard of you.
Well, it's a long story, but it started in '96 when a South African journalist, and his name is Gleeson, was doing a research on European-based players with a South African background. Whether was it you were born in South Africa, or you had an uncle or an auntie or whatever, grandfather. So he was going through all those potential South African players. And he showed up in June, July '96 at Utrecht train station, where I even picked him up myself, because in that day it was not very often that you had a request from someone from South Africa to have an interview. And that was the beginning of a journey that ended up 2 years later at the World Cup in France. In that journey, which was quite exciting, by the way, because the first interview with Mark Gleeson was published in Kickoff in South Africa, and still was not a lot of noise or rumor. But then South Africa qualified for the World Cup in 97, was it? Yeah. I still remember that. Was it 1-0 they scored against, and Philemon Masinga
Philemon Masinga.
Was it Masinga, when he did the airplane?
Yes.
And Clive Barker was a coach. And I wasn't there, but I saw later. I saw all those highlights. And that was also the beginning from a more intense relationship with South Africa, because then suddenly also other journalists, and there was another one, Peter Aufderheide, I think his name was, he also made some publicity for me, but I think there were a few more others. I think it was Pierre Issa, I thought Delron Buckley, but I think you corrected me, Delron was already in the picture in South Africa. So a few guys that were invited to have a trainers camp in March in Switzerland. So I'm talking about March 98 now, after the African Cup of Nations in 97. Yeah. So March 98, there was the camp in Zurich, where all the European based players were invited. So not only the new ones like me and Isa, but also Benny McCarthy was playing in Europe. Lucas Drade was playing for Leeds. Sean Michoud, Philemon Masinga, Mark, was it? Yeah, I think Sean Bartlett. Anyway, all those famous players. Mark Fish, of course. And that was my first training camp and training with South African national team. And that was all far away. It was not much of noise. It was not a fancy training camp. It's just getting together. And from there, after that camp, I think it lasted a week. Then they said, "Oh, maybe this goalkeeper can be useful." And when they announced the squad, I think there was not much contact in between. Although I have one very nice story about Mr. Jordan helped me to tell you that, but that's fantastic. But when the squad was announced, I think I was also a bit surprised, like you were. Who's this guy? And I thought, am I now in the national team suddenly? And yeah, that's what it was. I also didn't, because besides Arends and Boloy, I think it was also Mark Anderson. Was he also a goalkeeper? Was that him? I think he was also thinking, I'm going to the World Cup. So I took someone's place. And I think it was Mark Anderson. I took someone's place that later on came to me and said, I don't like you. Yep. Sorry, what happened? No, you took my place. But he was in a nice way, of course. So it was a very strange situation for me and also for Pierre Isa to be suddenly part of a national team that we didn't have any feeling with at the moment, because I lived my life in Europe. I was in South Africa once after I left when I was 2 years old. So to be honest, I didn't feel really like a South African. But it was a fantastic opportunity for me also to play international football at the highest level. So I thought, let's give it a chance.
Yeah, and Hans, like, that's, first of all, it's an incredible story, and what a testament to the power of journalism. You know, I think we might have had Mark Gleeson on this podcast, but we certainly know him, and he does great work. But it's incredible to hear that one kind of interview has that kind of effort. You know, as we were talking before, you know, I'm a fan of Blackburn Rovers, and we famously have Fran Brereton Diaz, who became a Chilean player because some Chileans found him on Football Manager and realized his grandmother was Chilean and made a petition on Instagram. And I just love that story and the power of that. But for you, Hans, like you mentioned, you know, this wasn't just kind of, you know, often we hear of players kind of coming from European nations and then playing for an African nation and kind of being big names, big personalities. But for you, it's the opposite. You're kind of joining the South African team that is at the peak of its powers, right? You know, this is post 1996 World AFCON that they won, 1998, you know, getting to the final, first World Cup, you're on the verge of it. What was that like for you, kind of joining the team with all these big personalities, big players? You know, what was that like for you actually joining the team?
It was well, how do I describe it? It was in the beginning, of course, I had to get used to everything, to all the players, but it went very smoothly. It went nice. It was nothing big. The camp in Zurich that we had in Switzerland, but helped a lot. That's why I already got to know a few of the players. And I must say, each and every one of them was very, very helpful. I remember Lucas Radebe took care of me. Sean Michoud, unfortunately, passed away. He was an up and top gentleman. He was so nice. So being part of the team wasn't so difficult at all. It was quite smoothly. I had to get used to all the things, because there was different how do you call it, different backgrounds, different cultures in one team. There was not too many whites. I think I was one of the few. Mark Gleeson, Mark Fish, Pierre Isa, but the rest was. But I didn't know the difference whether someone came from a Xhosa background or a Zulu background. So I also had to get used to all these things, and I read a lot about it. But it was still, being part of it was quite special. But once on the field, and I always tell that to people, once on the field, all these things fall apart. All these things don't matter anymore. Whether you come from Holland or South Africa, or born there, it doesn't matter which color that you have. All these things fall away once you're on the field, and you just train and you play and you try to win games. And for me, that was always my thing that I hold on to, because once on the field, everyone was the same, and the language was not a problem because my English was good enough to make myself understand on the field. So I liked it a lot. I must say, it took me a year going past the World Cup in '98. It took me a year to get used to everything. The flying up and down from Holland to South Africa, not the time difference, but the difference in altitude, sometimes playing on height instead of at sea level. It's all those things, everything was different. So it took me a year, where in the beginning, to be honest, I also thought, let me do the World Cup in '98 and then we'll see. Maybe it's a once opportunity, once in a lifetime, and then I just continue in Europe. But it was after the World Cup, it was nice, and I liked it a lot, and still getting used to everything. But I thought, no, this is going to be a long-term project, and it ended up being 8 years. But there was a lot of hiccups in the beginning. It was not always that smooth. I remember before the World Cup, it was a mission to get to the World Cup. We start our preparation for '98 in Esalen Park. Have you guys been in Esalen Park?
Yes, Esalen Park, just for our audience, was the home of youth football in South Africa. Where a lot of youngsters came from, i.e. Dylan Shepherd, who's the assistant coach at Kaizer Chiefs now. Yes, very aware of it.
Yeah, well, for me, it was like a military base where there was small rooms where we in. Nothing to do. There was, I think that time, did we have internet? I don't think so. There was not much we could do.
Definitely.
It was a terrible time for me, the first, and it was nothing glamorous. I thought, let's go to the World Cup, nice fancy hotels. Nothing of that. It was just an ordinary camp, and it took us, I think, 3-4 weeks we were there, maybe a little short, I don't know. So from Esalen Park, we flew to Argentina to have a friendly against Argentina, of all places, because I think we could organize friendlies as well everywhere, but no, we had to go to a different continent. So we flew from South Africa to Argentina. Beautiful experience, by the way, and we lost there 2-0. I think Batistuta still scored a goal, which was okay. He was a top striker at that time. From Argentina, we flew to Germany. So we spent a week or 10 days in the Schwarzwald, where we had a camp as well. Also friendlies there. And then finally, after 7 weeks of preparation, we end up in Vichy, which is somewhere in France, where we had our base camp. And I can tell you, by that time, many of our players were already exhausted from all the traveling and all the time difference and all the things that we had to do. It was, if I look back at it, the preparations they were not the best. I think it was very exciting to go everywhere, but it was for a football player not the best way to prepare for World Cup. But yeah.
So Hans, because I've got to jump in here, Alasdair, and I'm very sorry. One of the most debilitating things we have in South African football is around preparation. That the team doesn't get to be together for long enough, and the preparation isn't good. This is the first time I'm hearing there was a 7-week pre-World Cup camp. Now that hearing that makes me think, oh my gosh, that sounds fantastic. You're together for 7 weeks, you'll know each other well, you're understanding each other's play, but you're saying that it wasn't really effective.
No, maybe the 7 weeks were not the 7 weeks. Maybe it was 5 weeks. You know what? Maybe I am a little bit too enthusiastic about the times that we spent in Germany and in Argentina. But I think it was at least 6 weeks, because it was just after the league in Holland finished, was in May, and then June. No, I think it was a bit less. I think it was maximum 5 weeks, but still long enough to have a good preparation for World Cup. So back to your question, if it wasn't for so much traveling, it was good. But I remembered it was also quite exhausting to get to all those places and focus again and settling in again. And I was happy that we finally were in France, where we had our final camp before the first game against France in Marseille. So the preparation was a little bit chaotic. That's not good English. Anyway, it wasn't very smooth, but it was also exciting.
And for you then, Hans, you have this preparation, but your first game is up against, hosts France, who ultimately go on to win it. And you said, a couple of weeks before, you lost Argentina, and shame you conceded a goal, but it might as well be to someone like Batistuta And against France, you know, you're up against the likes of Henry, Trezeguet, you know, like Zidane, stellar players. What was that like for you? Because, you know, surely even just months before, you couldn't have, you know, thought in your wildest dreams that you'd be playing at a World Cup. And then, you know, 4 months later, yeah, you're there in Marseille, in the Velodrome, kind of playing in the World Cup.
Yeah, it was very special. That was very special, I must admit. I don't know, please help me. Was that the opening game of the World Cup?
I don't think back in those days, like the
That
host
was the
nation
opening
opened.
game.
I don't think it was.
No,
Wasn't.
that was the opening game of the World Cup.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a Friday, and I can remember, like I'm saying to you, I can remember this like it was yesterday. It was a Friday night. It was an evening game. Yeah, Issa scored 2 own goals. We lost 3-0.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone at university was saying, because he's playing in France, he's helping.
I was talking about Chiesa. Yeah, that story is very famous, of course. He even played at Marseille, I think, or not?
Yeah.
Not even
Yeah,
in
he
France,
played
but
at Marseille.
in the stadium. Yeah.
That was his stadium. Yeah. Sorry, Alex.
I think he was a bit unlucky, and I have a group of friends that are not very football related, and they thought 3 goals, 2 own goals. They thought that was all your fault, Hans. You let in 3 goals, and I can't do so much about the own goal. I mean, the first goal. I think I was a bit late with that corner. Who scored it? Dugarry, the first goal. I think so.
Dugarry, yeah.
And then, but the other 2 goals were absolutely not my fault. But people still blame me because some of the people, not everyone, but some of them don't have so much football gevoel, a feeling of football in South Africa. So they thought, 3 goals, the goalkeeper is useless. Which I think some of the publicity was like that, but at the end it was 3-0 is quite a big score, but against France it was okay. We could live with that. And the good thing is the next game was, I think, 3-4 days later against Denmark, and that for me was the best game I've played on the World Cup and that tournament, because the first nervous was gone. We had our first game after. We had the first game. We played the first game against France. Denmark was a different ball game. That was, I think, a fantastic game from us. I think we got 1-0 down. Who scored? Was it one of the Laudrup brothers?
No, I think it was Nielsen. Wasn't it Alan Nielsen?
Could be. But then we equalized, and I think we played a good game. And after that game, the excitement and relief of everyone that was in the camp, and I can tell you there was a bloody hell of a lot of people in the camp, because all South African officials were there. They were all kissing me. I never had so many kisses from black people in my life. It was really fantastic. And everyone was so happy that we at least had a result against a top team in Europe, Denmark at that time. There was a top team, so that was very good. And then also all the criticisms was gone away. It was much better. Yeah.
And for you, reflecting on the World Cup, ultimately, you know, it would be, you know, semi-disappointing in that South Africa got knocked out in the group stage, but obviously getting draws with Denmark and Saudi Arabia, you know, you can't overlook that in terms of your first World Cup experience. How do you reflect on the kind of tournament as a whole, like both for you personally, but also for kind of Bafana Bafana?
Yeah. No, but I think you go a little bit too quick now, because the last game against Saudi Arabia was exactly we I think it was 2-2. We drew again, but that game we should have won easily.
Got both.
Yeah, and I think wasn't Carlos Alberto Pereira the coach of Saudi Arabia who just during the World Cup? I think so. We have to find out that. But so it was chaos in the Saudi Arabian camp. So we'd have should easily win that game. But then it comes back to what I told you guys in the beginning. At that time, we spent 5, maybe 7 weeks in preparations, and then was it 2 weeks in France for the World Cup itself. By that time, everyone was like, let's go home, because we had enough. They didn't show it, of course. The players didn't tell you that like that, but you could feel it. That there was not so much eagerness anymore to really perform well in that last game. And we should have won that game, because that was we could have easily won that game. And I don't know how the score was, if we got 1-0 down or 2-0 up or whatsoever. But
would you mind if I tell you, Hans? Would you mind if I tell you how the game went? So we started off.
Hier is Karma van Sammer Wolker.
Sorry.
We started off. Sean Gordon scored.
Sorry, we have to do it again, because suddenly in my computer, someone is playing music now. Yeah, there we go again. Please explain what the score was there.
So the score was 2-2. Sean Bartlett got both.
I know. Yeah.
He got the first one in the 18th minute. Then Saudi Arabia scored in the 45th minute. Then they scored in the 74th minute. And then Sean Bartlett got the equalizer in the 93rd minute.
Okay. So there was a late equalizer.
Mm.
Okay. So for my feeling that game we could have won easily. And then if we did that, I think we went through to the next round, if I'm correct. Depends on what Denmark result was. I can't read it, but France was of course number one.
Mm-hmm.
But then we got back to how it all started, and that the preparation was so long that time everyone was exhausted, and they also wanted to go home. The game against Denmark was the highlight, and after that it was kind of some kind of feeling in the camp. I think also 2 of our players were sent away back home because they were a little bit naughty. One of them was Naughty McQuaina, by the way, because they got caught being away at night. So it was also sometimes chaos in our camp, to be honest. Yeah.
Hans, can I tell you something, right? Naughty McQuaina and I were at the same team together at that time. Yeah. We were playing together. We were at Manning Rangers. Naughty McQuaina was playing in midfield for us. He gets selected out of the blue for the national team. Nobody knows how. But when he came, I remember when he came back, and the article was Naughty being very naughty.
Yeah. But it was him and another one. Who was the other one that was sent
Brendan
away?
Augustine.
Was it Brendan Augustine? Ah, okay,
yes.
Okay. Yeah. I remember that night because it was we were all sleeping, and then suddenly people ran into the room. Where are you? Where are you? But our own security. I said, "Yeah, I'm sleeping." They left and went to the next room. And come on, what is this now? But I think 2 of the players were not there, so they were sent away. So it was also in our camp. It was a bit of a chaos at that time. So the focus, that's what I'm trying to say. The focus to win that last game, that wasn't there anymore.
Wait, so I just have to clarify. So you were in your room just sleeping, and then and the security guys break in and are saying kind of, what's going on? Where are you? Like, what
are
were
you there? Oh, are you there? Yeah.
Oh, so they were checking to make sure everyone was in their bed sleeping. And
absolutely. Yeah, that was our own security. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Welcome to
Hans. I want to go back to something you said. You said Danny Jordan, who is the president of SAFA, has been re-elected, was very helpful to you. Do you want to expand on that when you first started?
That's a very funny story, because in between the camps that I did, or in Zurich and the other one, of course I had to get some kind of South African passport, because I didn't have one at that time. I only had a Dutch passport. So and Danny also he thought, let me fly to Holland and meet Hans, because it's at least he knows who he's dealing with. So he flew from South Africa to Amsterdam, and I was with my team Heerenveen playing that night against Ajax in Amsterdam. So it was nice. He could watch the game. We could chat before about how to go along with all the administration that we were dealing with. So we discussed, let's meet the day before. Oh yeah, so let's meet the day before the game in Amsterdam. So I'm going there with my car. He's there in a hotel somewhere. But at that time there was no cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone. I don't know. Anyway, so it was very difficult to get in contact with him. So I think I had a cell phone. So I was phoning him, but he was nowhere to be seen. So I thought, fuck, well, what do I do now? And also I can't exactly remember where he was, but at a certain time I was calling him, I got hold of him, and we standing literally 10 meters away from each other. He was, I think, in a telephone box in that days, and I was on the cell phone, or the other way around, but we standing at the same place, more or less 10 meters away from each other. But I didn't know. I expected a black person, to be honest, and Mr. Jordan is not black. So it was very funny. But the most funny part was, well, not so funny. The next game, we are playing Ajax. And he's there, Mr. Jordan is there watching me play. And you know what the score was? we lost, I think, 7-2 against Ajax.
Oh no.
Oh, that's not a good baptism. Losing
Those score that sometimes it can happen once every 5 years. So can you imagine Mr. Jordan, he must go back to South Africa, telling, no, we found a keeper now. He only had 7 goals in last week against Ajax. It was off 7-0 or 7-2, but Ajax in that day, sometimes they were really good. And Heerenveen, sometimes we had a bad day. Anyway, it all came good because 3-4 months later, I was in the camp, as I said, before the World Cup. But I think it was quite funny. The first meeting with Danny, that we couldn't find each other in Amsterdam, and then he had to go back with a 7-2 score, telling people, no, this is a good goalkeeper.
I'm glad that he had at least like the insight to realize that those 7 goals didn't mean much, and that you could come good.
Yeah.
But I mean, I want to ask you, Hans, because for you it's such a kind of interesting journey, kind of having South African roots, but kind of growing up in the Netherlands, and then playing for South Africa, representing South Africa for quite a few years. But then, interestingly, you moved from playing your club football in the Netherlands to South Africa, as well as, from the national perspective. Why did you then kind of decide to make that move from the Netherlands, from Ajax to Ajax Cape Town? What made you decide that you wanted to kind of move to South Africa and play in the PSL?
It was quite easy, to be honest. During my time with the national team, many journalists always asked me, are you coming to play in South Africa? And then I thought, to get rid of all those things, I said, maybe at the end of my career, I might come to South Africa. Maybe, you never know. But then the end of my career was there, more or less. And then I played my last 2 years in Holland with Ajax in Amsterdam. And of course, at that time it was Ajax Amsterdam, Ajax Cape Town. They had a very nice cooperation. So that step was very easy. In Amsterdam, they didn't renew my contract. I was 36. And then I think, no, this is the time. If I want to do something in another country, if I want to play in another country, let's do it now. So Ajax and Amsterdam agreed on it. They said, listen, no, it's nice. If you go to Cape Town, we'll make sure that the salaries are not so big there, but we'll make sure that you get a little bit from us and a little bit, or not a good salary in South Africa. And then you can also be reporter for us, but you can also keep an eye on what's happening in our club there. So it was very easy. I had offers also from Kaizer Chiefs to go and play there, and I had 1 or 2 offers from Holland to stay there. But I wanted to go to Cape Town also because, I visited Cape Town before. I think it was a fantastic place. Realizing that Ajax Cape Town was not a big club in South Africa. In fact, it was a small club and they were struggling. But it was because of the connection with Ajax, it was very easy to do that. Everything was well organized for me. Ajax helped a lot, and they also paid a huge amount of my salary, which was also very pleasant. So that's how I ended up in Cape Town. And the idea was to stay here for 2 years. So from 2006 to 2008, and then an extra 2 years as some kind of management role towards the World Cup in 2010. That was the whole plan was 4 years. It turned out to be very different than that, but it ended up being 5 years with an extra year with Foppe de Haan, who came along, but also with a time back in Holland. I don't know if you want to discuss that, but after 2 years, I started in 2006.
Oh, Hans, tell us, please. Tell us.
You know what? I have a little bit difficulty with authority. So if I have people above me that are not good enough, then I'm not very nice. So the first 2 years in Cape Town, the first year was fantastic with Mouchine Etugral. I don't know if you know this of him as a coach. He was
desperate to get him on our show, Hans. Desperate.
Mouchine is. He was at that time, he was fantastic with the youngsters from Ajax Cape Town. So for my first year, we also won we won the Absa Cup, which is a Nedbank Cup now. That was very nice. But the second year, we got a young coach, Greg Rosley, and it didn't work between us. So we had a good season. I think we ended up second. We could have won the league at that time already. But he was a young, inexperienced coach, and I was an old, a little bit stubborn player. So we clashed the whole time. So it was not a nice. The second season wasn't too nice. So then I thought, listen, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to stay in.
Sorry, Hans. I'm sorry to stop you. No disrespect to you. Just let's expand on the clashes, because if you were to talk to me about clashing with a manager. You know, I played under Gordon Ingerson, who only cared about himself, selfish, very driven. There was our clash. He wasn't a player's manager. So what was your clash with Craig Rossley? Taking into account he had Stephen Pienaar in the team as well.
Sorry, who was in our team?
Stephen Pienaar.
Nee, he was already a long time in Holland at that time.
Oh, was he? Sorry, I got that wrong.
No, we had a good team at that time. You know what? We end up second with Machine. No, sorry, the first year not. We didn't end up. We end up somewhere 4th or 5th, so it was good. We were in the top 8, which was. I'm getting some light now. That's nice. So it was the first year was very good with Machine, and we won the cup at the end, which was fantastic. And I thought, let's continue with that, and then the second year is going to be even better. Then Machine decided, no, I'm going. I think he went back to Chiefs, and we were there left with a very young and unexperienced coach, Greg Rossley. Later, I met him a couple of years later. He's a nice guy, by the way. But at that time, he was an asshole. He wasn't nice at all. He thought he knew everything. He was the big boss, but I think he was younger than me. So we just clashed about tactical approach towards games. He even put me on the bench for 2 games to motivate me. He told me, I want to motivate you. I said, what? You don't put me on the bench. I also have a little bit of an ego. A little bit too big at that time, not anymore. But at that time, I think my ego was also a little bit too big for to handle these things. So he put me on the bench, and it was just not a nice year. But we end up second. And again, also that I felt if we had a good coach at that time, we could have won the league, win the league. But yeah, it didn't happen. So the clashes were mostly what I remember, lots of time about the technical approach. I remember that he had a team talk. And then after the team talk, before the game, we went with 2 or 3 players or 4 players. I'm not going to mention any names. But we went into a separate room and said, listen, this is what the coach said, but we're going to do it differently because he's got no clue. That's what happened in that time. Yeah. I don't hope he's going to watch this podcast, by the way. But
no, let him watch it. Let him come on and answer.
As I said, later on, I met him, Greg Rossley, and then I think we both laughed about how stupid we behaved sometimes back in that days. You know.
Hans, then you go back to Ajax in Holland.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us, now you go back there, what was the project like back now in Holland? And how long were you there for?
Yeah, after those 2 years, and we are talking about 2008 at the moment, I didn't have a club. I was waiting, and I could have played for Santos in Cape Town. They came to me, but there was also the money wasn't good enough. So I was just waiting, and I thought more or less maybe this is the end of my career. Not a very nice way. And then suddenly I got a phone call from someone in Amsterdam saying, listen, I think 2 of their goalkeepers are injured. They need another goalkeeper. Can we make a phone call to say that you're available? I said, yeah, why not do it? So it was done. And I think a week later, I sat in a plane flying back to Amsterdam. This was more or less in, I think, September, October. So I didn't train for 3-4 months. So I was a bit scared about injuries, but it turned out well. So I was there for 3 months, October, November, December, being the second goalkeeper because they had 1 goalkeeper left, which was nice. Back in football, back in the spotlights. And from there, I got my transfer back to Heerenveen, my old club, where I played a long time. In the beginning of 2009, they also were looking for another goalkeeper. The goalkeepers in Ajax became fit again, so there was nothing to do for me there. So I went back to Heerenveen and winning up the league of the cup in 2009, which was for Heerenveen the best achievement ever in the club history. So that's why, that's how I got back to Holland. My family at that time was still in South Africa, so it was like the other way around. My family was living in South Africa in Cape Town, and I was playing soccer in Holland, which felt like it was the other way around.
No, that's great to hear. That's so interesting, and kind of, yeah, what a great story in terms of, I feel like we tend to think of football clubs as being these kind of well-oiled machines. They've got these big plans in places and structures, but I love that it's just kind of, we know this guy Hans. He hasn't been playing for a few months, but he can do a job in goal. We'll ring him up, get him for a few months.
Yeah,
and then you come in and do your thing, go to Heerenveen, win a cup. Like it's brilliant.
The good thing was with Ajax. I remember who was the coach at that. I'm checking you guys now. Who was the coach at Ajax at that time?
I don't remember.
The second biggest player ever in Holland, or the third.
Frank de Boer?
No, not even close. Marco van Basten. So of course, Johan Cruyff. Johan Cruyff is the biggest one. And then is Marco van Basten or Ruud Gullit are second or third in order. So Marco van Basten was the coach of Ajax at that time. I thought, okay, that's nice also to train a few months under him, see how he is. So that was also for me a reason to do this, because I left my family alone. That didn't feel too good. But I thought, if it's only for 3 months, let me go. It ended up to be 8 months, but 9 months, but yeah.
Hans.
Anyway, back to Cape Town after that season. Are we there already?
Yeah, let's go back to Cape Town, Hans. Talk to me about, now, one of the biggest problems we have in South African football, Hans, is what do players do after their careers? And when I spoke to you and you told me about some of the things you're doing after your career, it just sounds really beautiful. Do you want to expand on that for us, please?
Yeah, but I think you are a little bit further than I am in my story. Going back to Cape Town, you mean as we are now? I don't know how much time we have, but
no, keep going.
I just want to emphasize on my. Just want to tell you about my last 2 years in Cape Town, because in 2009 I came back after a phone call from the same Mouchine Ertigral again, the coach who was back at Ajax. So I always, I always go in circles, and for some reason I always meet the same people again. So Mouchine was back at Ajax as a coach, and he said, "No, we need we need a good goalkeeper. Bring Hans back." But Hans was a bit expensive at that time, so the club said, "Maybe not." Okay, he said, "But I want Hans, so let's do it." And so I came back to Cape Town, and then I had the 2 most beautiful years in South Africa. I got used to the club football. Mouchine, as a coach, by the way, left the club after I think 4 months again. That's also how he was. He got an offer from Turkey. There we go. And then I brought Mr. Foppe de Haan, and I don't know if you guys know him, but Foppe was fantastic in Holland as a coach. He was for me for 8 years. He was like a second father. So he became the father of the success from Ajax Cape Town in the years 2009, 10, ending up in 11 when we quit home. So he made the foundation under 2 fantastic seasons in Cape Town, where we. Unfortunately, just missed on the World Cup, missed on the league title again, because I was a bit slow by kicking the ball away, and then we drew last game instead of winning the game. But I think it was a starting point for many South African young players to be very successful in South Africa. Tulani Serero, for example, he moved to Holland. Giorgio Maluleka moved to big clubs. Clayton Daniels, Nasir Ali, everyone of that team had a fantastic career after Foppe de Haan, and I think they're still very grateful for him for that, because he was the best coach that I ever had, and he also showed it in South Africa. So, and then 2011 was the end of my career. Courtney, it's a bit from left to right, but
yeah, that's fine.
I hope you can still follow my.
No, I can follow the timeline. Makes sense. It's fantastic. But I'll go back to my question I wanted to ask you. A lot of ex-professionals struggle after football.
That's true.
Not just struggle, battle to find something to do.
Yeah.
What is their next step in life? Can you tell us a bit more about the step you've taken, and what are you doing after football?
Yeah, funny enough, I went to Builders Warehouse this morning, and this is a side stepper, so you can maybe cut it out. But and one of the guys that's helping around the parking place, he comes to me and said, "You look like a famous football player. Are you Hans Vonk?" And, you know, that's always good for my ego after 10 years when people still recognize me. And then sometimes I make a joke, say, "No, never heard of him. What is he?" "No, he was a goalkeeper." I said, "Was he good?" "Yeah, he was very good." I said, "Okay, then it's me." So, but that was not the story. The story he was, "Hey, listen, but what happened to South African football players after a career?" He said, "Last week, we had a player here. I'm not going to mention his name, but I know a player that he didn't have money to buy anything. And also another player, he used to drive a big Porsche. He's got no money left at the moment." So apparently he was good involved in the soccer player scene in Cape Town. So I don't know why I'm telling you this, but back to your question. Looking after a career after football is not very easy, especially not for South African people, where we all know if they have money, they spend the money, whether it's for good things or bad things, they just spend the money and they don't look so much long term. One of my friends, Sean Roberts, he's like kind of an agent here in South Africa, and Sean is he tried to set up something like we have in Holland, like a pension fund. So guys, please, when you make some money, put something aside, because after 30, 35, you will need that money to move on. He said, I could try, I could talk. Nobody wanted to spend his money for later. They all want to spend it now. So, or want to save it for later. So they all want to spend it now. So the whole system in South Africa, whether it's the managers or the clubs or the players itself, there is no real long-term plan. So I can imagine a lot of them are struggling after a career. I didn't struggle because my financial background was very solid. In Holland, you have some kind of pension funds that you have to put in money. Long story, but it's very helpful when you have to start a second career. The only thing that you have to worry about in Holland is to find purpose in life again, find a goal in life. What do you want to do? And I always thought, I'm going to be very successful in management in football. So I never tried to be a coach, not a goalkeeper coach. It was so bloody flipping boring for me being a goalkeeper coach. I think I told you the story, Courtney, that I wasn't that typical goalkeeper that liked to dive around in the mud and make saves and train apart. I always want to be with the team. So there was not a goalkeeper coach in me, and it was very boring for me always. And also not a good, to become a real good coach was also not for me. So I wanted to become successful in management. Did a few courses after I came back to Holland and started working at a small club in Holland called AZ in a management role. And grew later to Heerenveen, or moved to Heerenveen and moved to Ajax in Amsterdam, of Cape Town, and Ajax to Amsterdam. So I had a purpose in life, which was football. But it turned out to be not what I expected. And I only found out 10 years later, because as I just told you, I've quit football now. And I'm focusing on other things in life that make me very happy.
And Hans, I don't know if you mind me asking, but, you know, was this a process over a long time that you realized, like, actually, for me, the kind of love of football isn't there anymore? Or was it a moment, like, how does that happen, where you kind of go from being, you know, professional football, again, us as, you know, I'm not speaking about Courtney because he's obviously played professionally as well, but, you know, for fans like me, you know, you think, oh, like footballers, they're living the dream, they're living my dream, you know, how does that process happen where, you know, you realize, actually, you know, I'm done with football, I want to move on, I want to go into other things? How did that come about?
It didn't happen overnight. It took a few years to get into that process where you start watching less and less games. That was in the beginning. In the beginning, I watched every game in Holland or in Europe or in even in the World Cups, of course. But at a certain times, I thought, I don't want to watch all those games anymore, because it's, you know, I've seen it now. I've seen the circle of teams doing well, and then they have to sell the best players. So that took them 3 years to come back. And so that was, I lost that interest. And also, I also made also a wrong choice in my career build-up, because I started at a club in Alkmaar, AZ, where there was a good foundation and I could work in the background. But already there was a very nice position coming in Heerenveen to become the technical director there. And I took that job not knowing that I wasn't ready for that. I didn't have enough management skill. I didn't study enough for that. I didn't have enough experience, and I also didn't have enough feeling of how to deal with people. So that job came way too early for me. And also, if you're doing things that you're not very good in, after 2 or 3 years, they didn't renew my contract. And again, I had a guy, there was a general director, he sent me away. And this guy came from a cycling background. So I thought, what the fuck is this now? As someone from a cycling background decides on my future, of my football future. And I still that ego that, listen, I know it better than anyone else, not knowing that I didn't, but it just didn't work for me. So I wasn't successful at Heerenveen. It was not the best part. And so that was also really the first sign of thinking, am I good enough in what I'm doing? Anyway, but then I got another chance to go to Cape Town, back to my favorite country, to work for Ajax Cape Town as head of youth. And I must say that was a big step forward in terms of having fun in your work again. And then I think we all were a bit unlucky that Ajax in 2020 decided to pull the trigger and say, listen, no, we're going to stop with Ajax Cape Town. But that time I enjoyed working in football again, I must say, but it was with youth. So again, I didn't watch too much senior games. Then COVID came, and then it was there was a few things that came along where I went back to Amsterdam because Ajax Cape Town wasn't anymore. Worked there for the international affairs or the partnerships, but we couldn't travel because of COVID. So it was a bit boring working from Amsterdam all the time. And then I realized, listen, I'm now 50, 51, 52. What am I going to do the rest of my life? I'm not going to do this half, yes, maybe not. So I decided, what do I really want? Well, I want South Africa in my life. I want to live in South Africa and also in Holland because I've got 3 kids that live in Holland and study there. So I wanted to do something between South Africa and Holland. Always football, but not any longer. So I had to find something else. And I wanted to do something for myself because I found out by that time, I don't need a boss above me because that doesn't work for me. So I thought the only way to do it is start my own business. And after long discussions with good friends on my side, okay, we're going to start our own business. I have a partner in Hout Bay in Cape Town. He's been traveling for 25 years, traveling business for 25 years because I can't do it alone. So I just started my own business in traveling with golf, wine, and wildlife, where the first 2 are my favorites. I'm completely golf addicted, and I do like my wine. And of course, the nation South Africa is so beautiful to share. That is also part of what we offer to people in Holland. So then also private, also everything fell to places because, as I said, I met a beautiful girl from Namibia, and we bought a house together in South Africa, and that also gave me a secure place to go to. And I'm telling you, as we say, we are now 2 weeks in the new house. I think it's fantastic. It's nice to have our own home after a couple of years of traveling around. So everything fell in places after a while. And back to the football, I don't miss it at the moment. I do miss if I see Erik ten Hag, for example. For you guys, Erik ten Hag, the coach of Man United. We played together for 2 years in RKC Waalwijk in Holland when we both started our careers as football players. He was even more stubborn than I was. But and sometimes, no, but he was really bad, but in a nice way. But sometimes I'm a little bit jealous from, maybe I could have stand there as well in full Wembley, shaking the hand of the Prince and in the spotlights of millions of people. That's sometimes like, maybe I should have done that and that in my career. But 1 hour later, I'm back in reality, and now I also have a fantastic life in Cape Town.
Well, Hans, I mean, maybe you could be the one in Wembley, going up against Pep Guardiola. But do you think that Erik ten Hag could run his own business in South Africa with wine, golf, and wildlife?
Exactly. I like that nuance. That's exactly how it is. Everyone, you know what? Poppe de Haan always say, you always get what you deserve. I don't think it's from him, but at the end, we always complained when I played, we never get a penalty. And but then you say, over the whole season, you just get as many penalties as you deserve. And I think that's with everything in life, that sometimes you just, There's also Cape Town. Sometimes the lights go off and then suddenly they come on again. That's called load shedding. This time it's manual load shedding by my girlfriend here. But sometimes the lights just go off here in Cape Town. Anyway, but no, that you're right. It is everyone gets at the end. You get what you're really good in. If you find something, I always tell my kids, just make sure that you find something that you are really good in, because that makes life so much easier. Whether it's in journalism or it's in education, Courtney, if you find something, and I was lucky enough to make a change after my 50th, because not many people can do that financially or whatever. I was very lucky to make that change, so it was, yeah. Here I am.
Hans Vonk, what a story, what a timeline.
Yeah.
What a journey. And Hans, thank you for breaking it down for us and for our audience to know where you come from, what you did, and also how you planned for your future. Really welcome. Thank you so much for sitting with us today.